What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome back to my channel. Today, it's my last top 25 video I'm going to be posting. It's my week 14 or conference championship week top 25 poll, along with the playoff ranking reaction, all that good stuff to come. Schedule's going to look a little different this week. Sorry I couldn't post yesterday. I had a lot of homework and stuff to do. So today you're going to get two videos. It's this one, my top 25, and then playoff prediction and New Year's Six bowl game prediction, along with you will also get, along with Thursday, you'll get my preview prediction for every conference championship game. That's all 10 conferences. And then Saturday, late Saturday night, you're going to get my review for conference championships. You're going to get all of that. And then I won't be able to post Sunday to the reaction. So I will post on Monday my reaction to the field. Kind of looking at the New Year's Six bowl games as well, things like that. So, yeah, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into my top 25 poll. But, hey, if you enjoy this video, leave a like on it, subscribe, ring the bell, share the video, leave a comment, do anything you can, help support the channel. And without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right on into my top 25. We had a couple teams drop out this week from my poll. That was UTSA at 14th. You know, I really did think about keeping UTSA in the poll, but I just barely couldn't. If I had room for 26, UTSA would be 26. But of course, then I would have titled this my top 26 teams. When it's not, it's my top 25 teams. UTSA is number 26. They dropped out all the way from 14th after they got absolutely obliterated by North Texas. And then Wisconsin dropped out as well. Again, if there was 26-27, UTSA and Wisconsin would be right there. But among some other teams in my first five out, I have App State, Minnesota, and Purdue. So three Big Ten teams waiting to get into the poll. Probably won't, and most likely won't after this week's conference championship games take place. So, yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and look. Of course, we're going to look at my rankings first, talk about it, why I have teams are where they are, and then over to the playoff rankings we go. And you can look at comparisons to the AP USA Today poll right there in the middle. Kentucky, I have back ranked at number 25. Finished off the regular season at 9-3, so a solid year for Kentucky, and they're going to finish the regular season ranked. I have them at 25 after they beat Louisville last week. Louisiana moves up one spot to number 24. They are heading into their conference championship game, where it is a rematch against App State. Remember what happened the first time they played? Yeah. Louisiana definitely got the upper hand in that game, absolutely obliterating App State. We'll see if it happens again this Saturday. I don't think it will. I think it'll be a much closer game, but this Louisiana team, as the season has gone on, has started to find their stretch, but they got at least 2 games left, they have 2 games left, the Sun Belt Championship game, and then, of course, their bowl game wherever they end up. Probably end up playing a team like BYU or UTSA or someone along those lines. But Louisiana had a very good regular season. They move up a spot to 24. 23, I have dropping 10 spots as Texas A&M after losing to an LSU team that has been, well, let's face it, unimpressive this year has at LSU. Texas A&M sits at 8-4. That's how they finish out the regular season. And I've dropped them 10 spots from 13th to 23rd. I still think that Texas A&M is one of, if not, you can make the argument for the best 4-loss team in the entire nation. But, of course, you look at Arkansas right there at number 22. The reason they are above Texas A&M, they have the head-to-head win. And they have similar resumes as well. Arkansas definitely lost some games that maybe they shouldn't have lost. They also won some games that, again, like Texas A&M, probably shouldn't have won. So the resumes are very similar. So head-to-head puts Arkansas above, and they are back in the rankings. Remember, they were my 26 last week. So I put Arkansas in here at number 22. And then Clemson moving up 3 spots up to number 21. Good performance last week. They shut out South Carolina, and that's an offense that can score some points. And the Clemson defense just said, absolutely not. We are not going to let this happen. And they didn't. Clemson was able to string together a shutout win against their in-state rival. They move up to 21. So let's look at the playoff ranking side of things. You have Texas A&M down at number 25. Again, I have them at 23. No big comparison there. Louisiana is finally in the rankings for the committee, and they have them right where I have them, so no big argument. And then Kentucky right there at number 23. So for when you compare them to me, they just switched A&M and Kentucky. I don't have a huge problem with that because Kentucky, of course, has a better record than Texas A&M up to this point. I think Texas A&M is capable of playing some better football than Kentucky, and I think they've shown more this year. That's why I have them ahead of Kentucky, but no real argument for me. Of course, no real argument for the spot that Arkansas is in. They are in the exact same spot. And then Houston, moving up 3 spots to number 21. Couldn't crack the top 20 for Cincinnati, but that is the American Athletic Championship game going to be played in Nippert Stadium. Should be a very fun, entertaining, interesting game to watch. And let's go ahead and move on. 20 through 16 here. I got NC State at number 20. Something that you're going to notice if you look at the AP poll rankings, me and the AP poll were on point this week, meaning we were very similar. Again, I make these rankings before any of the polls come out. So as soon as the action is done on Saturday, I make my top 25 poll. I just put them in, I change things around, and then I look at the polls. That's when I write them down. But me and the AP poll were on point this week. NC State at 20, San Diego State at 19, and Wake Forest at 18 all moved up 3 spots. So NC State with that phenomenal comeback victory against North Carolina. I thought about jumping them ahead of San Diego State, but I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. As much as I wanted to, I just couldn't do it. San Diego State sitting at 11-1 has been very impressive this year. Their offense has, well, yeah, not been there at times, but for the most part, when this team needs a win, they're able to get the win by way of their defense. Wake Forest is here at number 18. Of course, they are in the ACC championship game. They will be playing Pitt, a team that I have at 16th. And hey, they moved up 4 spots from last week. How about that? Good for you, Pitt. They beat a pretty feisty Virginia team, and then went on to beat Syracuse this past week. So for Pitt, this is a very good season for Pitt. Of course, both Pitt and Wake Forest are sitting right now at 10-2. I don't have either of them in my top 15 just because I feel like there are teams that are ahead of them that are playing better football, that have a better strength of record, whatever may have you. But there you go. And then Houston sitting at number 17. They did drop 1 spot from last week. Still kind of hovering around that same spot they've been in ever since they got into my poll in the first place. But back to San Diego State and North Carolina State here. The committee does have North Carolina State ahead of San Diego State. Lots of moves here. Clemson jumped up 3 spots to number 20. Again, they got the shutout win. I have them at 21. No argument there. San Diego State and NC State each jumped up 2 spots. They've had North Carolina State ahead of San Diego State the entire way. So not a big surprise why they're ahead of them there. I've had San Diego State ahead of North Carolina State pretty much the entire time as well. So again, not a huge argument there. Although there are times where San Diego State, of course, has been behind. But as of late, they have been ahead of the Wolfpack. When you look back over at the committee side, lots of movers up 2 spots this week. Utah moving up 2 spots to number 17. Of course, they're going to play in the Pac-12 championship game against Oregon. You have not seen Utah yet for me. You will. Oh, yeah, you will. But you have not seen them yet for me. And then Wake Forest here at 16th. So this area, I feel like the committee did well in. Of course, I would rank Houston higher. I think Utah should be above both of the teams in the ACC. Obviously, you see here they do have them above NC State, but not above the 2 teams that are in the championship game. But I also think it's really close. There are a lot of good teams this year, separated by very slim margins, and it's hard to put together rankings this year. There's really no clear-cut, okay, this is where this team should be. The general range, yes, absolutely, of where a team should be, but there's really no clear cut and dry, this is where a team needs to be. Overall, again, I know people normally aren't happy with the playoff rankings, but the precedent that they've set has been pretty good, and the rankings you see agree with me for a lot of it and where I generally have teams. So I'm not complaining a whole lot. I feel like the committee did a pretty solid job this week. And you'll see that evident here in a little bit. But let's move on now to 15 through 11. You see Pitt in here at 15 for the committee. I have Iowa at 15. Yeah, they jumped 4 spots from last week after a comeback win against Nebraska, or should I say a collapse against Nebraska. Iowa's now in the Big Ten championship game thanks to the loss to Wisconsin. I also feel like Iowa was still ahead of Pitt, and I couldn't jump Pitt over Iowa. The committee couldn't there either. But Iowa, I feel like, deserving of a top 15 ranking. Their offense has been better in the past couple of weeks, but it still has not been where it probably should be, or where it probably needs to be to win a Big Ten championship, right? They are going to have a fun time with who they have to face in the Big Ten championship game in the Michigan Wolverines. You'll see where I have them in a little bit. Both the committee and I agree that Oklahoma should be at number 14. We both had them at number 10 last week, and we both dropped them as such to number 14. So, hey, no real argument there. Oklahoma has just not performed up to standard. People thought this was going to be the year for Oklahoma to win a national championship, and that just has not been the case. Oklahoma's dealt with a lot of ebb and flow in this year, and it hasn't all really worked out for Oklahoma. So they're going to sit here at number 14. 13, I have Utah. Here you go. Utah's jumped up 4 spots. I know that was a little bit of a shaky performance against Colorado, but overall, when I go back and I rewatch that game, I don't think Utah played that bad. I thought Utah played really well. Yes, there were some opportunities missed and some things that you'd like to change in that game, but overall, Utah played well. They've been playing well for a lot of this year, and their losses are not to some bad competition. When you look, BYU, 10-2 in the independent. They're at number 12 ahead of them. They jumped up 3 spots from last week. Of course, after that win against USC, knocking them out of bowl eligibility. BYU's had a good season, so there you go. But back to Utah. They've lost to BYU, San Diego State as well. That's a team that's in their conference championship game sitting at 11-1. So Utah's not lost to bad teams at all. And, of course, they've beaten the team that they're going to have a rematch against in the Pac-12 championship game. So Utah, I feel like, is absolutely deserving of a top 15 spot. I have them at number 13. Just talked about it. BYU is here at number 12, and Michigan State is at number 11. They move up 1 spot after beating Penn State last week in the snow in East Lansing. Very fun, entertaining game to watch. I was still in a little bit of pain watching that game. Of course, me being an Ohio State fan, of course, they lost to Michigan, although Ohio State basketball beating Duke last night definitely took some of the edge off that game. Still hurts that, of course, it's to Michigan. But again, I hold my L's. That Ohio State basketball game last night was nuts. Anyways, there you go. Had to get it in, right? I'll talk about it a little bit more later. But BYU, they could still get into a New Year's Six bowl game. Could. Will they? I don't quite know. They maybe, possibly, but I don't quite know. But when you look at the team ahead of them, though, at Michigan State, moving over to playoff rankings now, the top 12 should be pretty much a consensus. It should be BYU, Michigan State, and then the teams you're going to see at 10 through 1. And I think the top 10 is obvious. I think the top 12 are obvious. It's filling in everything else. That's kind of difficult right now because you could put so many different teams in so many different places right now. But Michigan State, BYU, the committee and I have them at the exact same spots. So no argument there. Oklahoma, again, I've already talked about. They dropped 4 spots from last week, as I dropped them 4 spots from last week. Iowa's moving up 3 spots to number 13. The committee has liked Iowa more than I have, but both of us have them in the top 15. They're going to go play for a Big Ten championship game. And if they win that, you likely maybe see Iowa in the Rose Bowl with where they are now. If not, Michigan probably still goes to the Rose Bowl. It'll be an interesting case of events to see what happens if Iowa wins that game. But they are sitting here right now at number 13. And then Pitt, they're at number 15. Of course, playing for the ACC championship this Saturday as well. Again, I'll predict all of these games tomorrow. So you guys have plenty of time to watch it, gather your own thoughts, maybe even let me know. But again, so yeah, there you go. There's 15 through 11. Let's move into the top 10 now. And hold on a second. What do we have? Is it all hold on. It's all the same. So every single poll this week had the exact same rankings from 10 to 6. They go as follows. Oregon, you see here at number 10. This team has still not looked the part of that week 2 performance against the Ohio State Buckeyes, but they could get a rematch to prove it wasn't a fluke. Going on the road to Columbus, a very hard thing to do. Oregon did it, and they came out victorious in week 2. Since then, Ohio State, who you see here at number 7, has been playing much better football. Even though they did lose that game to Michigan, this is still a top 10 team capable of course, of great things. It's still a young team, and for Ohio State fans out there, and even for Oregon fans out there that are bummed and disappointed that, well, your team probably is not going to get into the college football playoff. Bummed that your team is not going to get into the college football playoff. But there are still some things to gather from both of these programs. Ohio State being pretty young. Oregon's going to lose a lot of talent this year. They're going to need some help, but they still have a Pac-12 title to play for. So interesting thing there for the Oregon Ducks to watch, because they could get a rematch with the Buckeyes in the Rose Bowl to prove that week 2 game was not a fluke. Baylor and Ole Miss, you see here at 8 and 9. I've had Ole Miss ahead of Baylor pretty much the entire way. The committee finally did that as well. They jumped Ole Miss ahead of Baylor after Baylor had quite a scare last week against Texas Tech. Of course, Garibay, who had that crazy 62-yarder to beat Iowa State, missed a game-tying 53-yarder, and Baylor escapes. They are going to go to the Big 12 championship game as a top 10 team. We'll see what happens there in that one. They get a rematch with a team that you're going to see here in the top 5. Of course, Ole Miss at number 8. And for Ole Miss and Baylor, these have been 2 fantastic seasons. Baylor's going to get to play an extra game in their conference championship game, but both teams went 10-2. Fantastic seasons for both of these programs, especially with expectations coming into the year. Ole Miss, everyone thought to be kind of 7-5, 8-4. I had them at 9-3. They went 10-2 this year. It's their first 10-win program, or their first 10-win season in program history. Really good stuff I saw from Ole Miss this year. Ohio State is at number 7. Of course, the loss to Michigan hurts, right? Yep. Buckeye fans like me, I know you feel my pain. That loss to Michigan does hurt, but don't fret, because this Buckeye team is still very young. This was a lot of these kids' first time playing in the game. And even though Ohio State will not end up making the playoffs this year, Ohio State fans, as of right now, can look forward to Pasadena. The Rose Bowl is always a fun time, always a good consolation prize. And this Ohio State team is still young. They're going to be back next year, but they still have one more game to play. It should be a New Year's 6 bowl game, but we, of course, will see what happens. Notre Dame is then here at number 6. Interesting thing with Notre Dame now, and I didn't mention it with Oklahoma, but I'll say it now. The coaching carousel is starting to take shape. So Brian Kelly is gone now to LSU. Lincoln Riley is gone now to USC. And we'll look at the coaching carousel this offseason and just see like who's changed jobs, what I think is a good hire, what I think is maybe kind of an iffy hire. You'll see all of that later this offseason once things have started to slow down. The national championship is over. We'll look at coaching carousel, things like that, predicted moves. You'll get all that. But Notre Dame, they still have a game left to play, and they even can still make the college football playoffs. So not quite sure why Brian Kelly left at this point in time. Again, I know the society we live in, money talks. But just for Brian Kelly to leave at this time seems really strange to me. But he has gone to LSU, so they're going to have an interim head coach for their bowl game, whether it be a New Year's 6 game or the college football playoff, because it's going to be one of the two. Notre Dame needs a lot of things to happen for them to make the playoff, but it still can happen. So Brian Kelly leaving, the athletic directors come out and said he's not surprised that Notre Dame's going to be fine. But if they make the playoffs now, I wonder how fine Notre Dame is actually going to be. Well, that'll be interesting to watch. But there you go. Every single poll had the exact same 6 through 10, but the polls did differ on who the top 5 were. Not on the top 5 teams, but the order that the top 5 teams should be in. I happen to agree with the AP poll. Georgia, of course, is the easy number 1. Michigan vaults to number 2 after that excellent win in the game against the Ohio State Buckeyes. And if they And if they take care of business against Iowa in Indianapolis, they get to make the college football playoff. And hopefully this gets a lot of monkeys off of Jim Harbaugh's back, maybe even a lot of critics off Jim Harbaugh's back as well. I have Cincinnati at 3. The playoff committee has them at 4. I have Bama at 4, and the playoff committee has them at 3. Again, I think right now, Bama, they've had a lot of close calls this year. Cincinnati has as well, but for a team like Cincinnati, again, they're still undefeated. Bama has the one loss. That's why I have Cincinnati above Bama up to this point. I absolutely see why the committee is putting Alabama above Cincinnati. It's because they're in the SEC. They play a tougher conference, the better strength of schedule, better resume, etc., etc., etc. But I think once it's all said and done, this game between Georgia and Alabama is going to be fantastic in the SEC championship game, and it really is going to determine a lot. Again, on Friday, you're going to get my playoff scenario video on what can kind of happen in these playoffs, things like that. And then Oklahoma State is the consensus number 5 pick. And Oklahoma State, it's pretty simple. If you win, you're more than likely in. Now, of course, there are scenarios where, say, Alabama beats Georgia. Again, I'll go through a whole bunch of scenarios on Friday. I don't plan for it to be a super long video, but I will go through some of the more common and then the more chaotic scenarios as well. I'll probably do 5 or 6. I did this last year. I'll end up doing it again this year. I don't know what's happening with my green screen. It's kind of freaking out. Sorry. It's towards the end of the video, I promise. But Oklahoma State, it's pretty much as simple as you win and you're in, as long as Georgia beats Alabama. I don't know if I were Oklahoma State, I'd feel pretty confident going into a debate with Cincinnati. If Alabama wins, Michigan wins, and then Cincinnati and Oklahoma State win their conference championship games, if I were the Pokes, I would feel pretty comfortable going into a debate with Cincinnati. Me personally, I feel like Cincinnati should get to go. That's probably the Ohio bias in me, among some other things, and whatever, you guys can say what you want. But for the playoff committee, they have Cincinnati above Oklahoma State. So that's going to be an interesting conversation. I'll talk more about that on Friday. But as for right now, I'm going to leave it right here with this. I'm going to leave this video right here. So let me know what you guys thought of my rankings. Let me know what you thought of the playoff rankings. Please do like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. And I will see all of you guys later tonight with another video. It's my playoff predictions and New Year's 6 bowl game predictions. So I'll see y'all later. Goodbye.